Hi there. Welcome to the Virtual Training Company. I'm glad that you have decided to take a look at some C++ programming fundamentals. That's our video series that we're going to be looking at here for the next several hours. My name is Tim Hegarty. I'm a CISSP, CISA, and MCSE. And we'll define all of those things later if anybody cares in a whole other chapter. I am an application developer. I've been writing code since the mid-80s, and now I own my own network consultancy, do a lot of IT security work and security audit and things like that. I also do quite a bit of C++ programming, and that's why I'm doing this video course. Again, thank you for stopping in and taking a look at this series of videos. I hope you enjoy what VTC and I have put together here for you. In this course, we're going to take a look at the C++ history and some of its ancestors, including the C language and BCPL and a few others like that. We will particularly study object orientation and how to understand the object-oriented programming paradigm. It's kind of a different way of thinking. I'll tell you that right now. But by the time you get through this series of courses, you'll be an object-oriented programmer, maybe just a junior one, but you'll be able to do it. We'll look at classes, objects, interfaces to objects, and what all of those things mean. We'll of course take a look at the basic structure of a C++ program, but we are not going to get into all the nitty-gritty of for loops and whiles and things like that, and all the typing and that sort of thing. For all of that, you need to go to the VTC C programming course. All of those items, the nuts and bolts of C, are still with us in C++. But C++ gave us the other things, the object orientation and some other ways to be able to program. And that's what this course is all about. So if you need that lower level stuff, go back over and pick up my C programming course and run through it. We will take a look at some new special member functions like constructors and destructors. We will look at how to make some declarations and statements because we need to know how to declare classes and define them to be able to instantiate them. That's a new term we'll learn about. We'll take a look through the C++ standard library, some of it that's included with the compiler, and we'll take a look at access checking and exception handling, how to do some of those things in the C++ language. So I think it'll be a pretty good ride through the language, and I think you'll learn a lot. And I again thank you for coming along for the ride. Let's go on to the next video. Welcome back to the VTC C++ Programming Fundamentals video series. We're going to take a few minutes to talk about a little short history of C++, just a little bit of the background and where this language came from. C++ was created by Bjarne Stroustrup. I will admit that I have never heard his name said in any kind of a video series or anything, so I'm hoping that the pronunciation is correct of that. He's got some very interesting books and writings out there. One of them is the C++ Programming Language 3rd edition. Highly recommended by me anyway, that you pick that up. It is a large book, close to 1,000 pages. Excellent reference manual, a lot of good tutorials, a lot of good information in there. And some of this history comes from Bjarne's writings within that book. When C++ was created, some of the things that he wanted to make sure happened were one, that the C language would still be supported. Much of the C++ language grows out of the C programming language from Kernighan and Ritchie. And if you did my C programming course, you have some history and background about that one and the C language book that I recommended for that course and where that language came from. But BCPL was another language that contributed a lot of ideas to C++. One of those is as simple as the /comment that you'll see. That /comment was in C for a while, was removed and then put back again in later iterations of the language, and now is permanently in C++, and we'll use it quite a bit as we comment our way through things. That's just one of the things that came from BCPL. The class constructions and the object-oriented programming ideas come from a language called Simula 67. When Stroustrup created C++, he had some projects of his own that he needed to perform, and he called it C with classes. He took the the main C compiler of the day and started adding capabilities to it from these other languages and called it C with classes. The C++ name was put on the language by Rick Masidi in 1983. It is the post increment operator that we know from C. So this says that C is one better than, or is an incremental increase. C++ is an incremental increase over the C language. The language that we're going to learn about is not named D because it is not an entirely new language. It is C incremented, post-incremented. They also make reference to Orwell's 1984 and the language, the doublespeak language that is in the back of that. If you want to take a look at that appendix and see what they're saying there about adding modifiers to words. So there's a little bit of language history in there as well, literature. The nice thing about C++, or one of the nice things, that's something that has made it such an enormously popular language, is it is still low level enough, just like C, to be quite efficient and to be able to be written to be very efficient on the machine, on the hardware that compiler has been implemented for. But on the other hand, the language is still high level enough to be easy to code in, easy to read, and easy to understand as a beginning programmer. Now C++, just like C, does make a heavy use of additional libraries. There are not that many things built into the language itself. The language is very clean. It does come with some intrinsic math functions, basics like that any language needs, but it's very able to coexist with other languages, other compiler types. You're able to set up the way parameters are called on, pushed and popped on and off of the stack, the way calls are made if you need a C format or a C++ format. And we won't see a whole lot of that. That's really down deep in the language as we go through this, because this is C++ fundamentals, but just understand that it is able to do some of those things. C++ primarily adds the object-oriented programming paradigm, the way of thinking, totally new way of thinking about how to design an application and how to get it to do what you want and not do what you don't want, how to design out the bugs. Object-oriented programming, OOP, will in most cases help a good programmer to be better. It will give a good programmer better structures to work with and better ways to think about problems before the design is developed or as the design is developed. OOP, though, will not help a bad programmer to be a good programmer. If you don't have any design skills and you just kind of hack away at things, OOP is not going to save you, and certainly not C++ is not going to, because it does not enforce classes and object-oriented programming. Because remember, it still supports C. So everything that you can do in C and any C programs that you had out there that don't use classes, don't use object-oriented programming or any of that, they will still compile and work just fine using a C++ compiler. So it doesn't force you to think this way, though it will assist you if you try to make the jump to the object-oriented paradigm. OOP will assist in the design of the program. We will be seeing that as we look at designing classes and operators, and yeah, we get to design our own new operators in classes, which will be pretty interesting, and how we get to define methods and what's a private method and a public method and a protected method and things like that when we look at our access portion of the class. So the OOP will be a great thing to know, and it helps you in any language, not just C++. It's really not necessary to fully understand and be a fluent C programmer before you jump into C++. There's even some bad habits you might have picked up in C that you don't want to take forward into C++. So if you already know C, that's great. If you want to know it as well for other things that you're doing, by all means, we have a great C programming video series over in the other part of VTC. By all means, go over there and take a look at it. But it is not necessary for you to be a C programmer to understand this course and to hopefully really understand and take away a lot of knowledge about C++. So that's our short history of C++. We're going to head on into our next video in the C++ programming fundamentals. Thanks for listening. We need to take a look at how we're going to get a C++ compiler working on our machine. This series of videos is going to focus on programming in C++ using the Microsoft Visual Studio 2005 Express Edition. Now, Microsoft offers quite a few different C++ compilers, and they have across the years. You may be familiar with some of their C compilers, and then later on ones that added C++ to the mix. The latest iteration of that is in fact Visual Studio 2005, which has several different languages supported in it. Now, the 2005 Express Edition, the EEs, there are several of those as well, but what's more important to us is they are free. Now, they don't have all of the super duper features and powers and capabilities of the big Visual Studio 2005, but they don't cost $800 either. So we're going to use Express Edition. And you can use an Express Edition for Visual Basic. There's one for web development. There's one for Microsoft's version of Java, all of those different kinds of languages. Of course, the one that we want is the one for C++. Now, if you want to do this on Linux, that's fine. Many or most, all actually, Linux distros include the GNU C++ compiler or CPP. They're usually soft linked to each other. And you can easily find those if you are a Linux person and you want to do that. You most likely already have the knowledge to find a distro or to use your particular package manager to pick up all of the compiler libraries and other resources, underlying linkers and things like that that you need on Linux. I don't want to focus on that. I don't want to take us off into what it takes to get a compiler onto an OS like that. But I will take us through at least to the site and give you a couple of images here of what it will take you to get the Express Edition. Let me switch over to my browser here because I'm already sitting on the Visual Studio Express site. Over here, this is what it should look like to you. There you can see the link, msdn.microsoft.com/vstudio/express. Now you can go up a level and just take a look at vStudio, and that will show you the commercial products that are available for sale or for purchase out on Microsoft. But we are in the Express Edition areas. And of course what we want to do, let me scroll this down a little bit here, is we want the Visual C++. You can get an overview and a feature tour and all kinds of other wonderful things out there. But we want to click on that and bring up that part of the site which contains the links that we're looking for Visual C++ 2005 Express Edition. I have to run 800 by 600 so you can see things, so I need to scroll this over here. And this is the one you want right here. Get it for free, download. Then once you download it and install it, you may ask to do a service pack if they haven't given you the latest one under this download button. But go through all the steps. Then you can register the product, and I think you have to give them an email address and your name. Nothing too intrusive, but you get a key to register in the product, and then the product works just fine. It will function without that, but of course they want you to register so they can tell you all kinds of other wonderful Microsoft things that you can get. And actually some of the starter kits and things that they're going to send you information on are really interesting, and I think you can take your knowledge, your new knowledge of C++ that you're going to pick up here in our videos to bear against the new kits and things that they're going to give you. There's all kinds of good links here. You can take a feature tour and see some of the other things while you're waiting on the thing to download and get it all installed. But that's where you need to go. Microsoft, msdn.microsoft.com, Visual Studio, or vStudio, I should say, /express, and then when you click, you'll actually go to Visual C, and then that's the button you want, download over there. And I show you that because the first time I came out here, I wound up watching the whole product demo before I noticed that little download button up there in the corner. So if you do take the feature tour, it will eventually drop you into the download area so that you can pick it up. If you have an interest, there's Visual Web Developer, Visual Basics, C#, and Visual J# that are also available. And there's a SQL Server Express, which is a stripped down version of SQL Server that you can run. And again, all of those are freebies that you can put out there on your machine and learn some languages and learn how some of these things can work together if you want to try to get into that line of work. So that's what you need to do right now is go out there and get C++ on your Windows machine. The next video we'll take a look at how to bring it up and test it and make sure the thing is functioning for you on your particular installation. So I'll see you back here then. Alrighty, glad to have you back. Hey, that was a fun few minutes, huh? Did you go and get the Visual Studio 2005 C++ Express Edition and all of its, however many megabytes it is these days, all of its size downloaded and installed and updated, and maybe you had a couple of reboots in there. Sometimes that has to happen as it gets itself into order and loaded. Well, good. Let's see if all of that work you just did actually functions or not. What we're going to do is we're going to start the Express Edition Visual Studio, and then we're going to create a project. We're going to create a Common Language Runtime project, a CLR, and that's Microsoft's implementation of the CLI standard, which is a way for multiple languages, because you see how many languages Visual Studio supports. This is a way for those languages to be able to depend on one another and to pass data between each other. So if you're part of a development team that somebody wants to create in J# or C# or somebody else wants to do Visual Basic, if they select the CLR, the Common Language Runtime, then things will be loaded properly and each of you can call the other's functions and you can share information and share blocks of code between each other. We'll give the project a name, call it Hello World, and then we will run our little project because it'll already have Hello World in it. They know what you want to do for your first program, so they're going to put that in there, and we'll run it without debug, and that's Control F5, or I'll show you where it is on the menus. So let me switch out here. Let me bring up my all programs, and then I need to drop way down here to Visual Studio because it doesn't go into Microsoft. It goes under Visual C++ 2005 Express Edition down here, and then there's the command prompt. And you probably, if you went through the C programming course with me, you remember that's where we got our command prompt from. We never went into the IDE. So now we're going to go into the integrated development environment and fire it off. So that's this guy here. So that's our Express Edition. We'll start it up, and that's what it should look like. I reset my menu so that it would look the same as yours should look the first time you run it. And I don't like this Solution Explorer pinned open, so I'm going to click that off so we have a little more space to work with in here. So now all we need to do is create a new project. If we drag that down just a little bit, you can probably see it if you're on a 1024 by 768 screen, but I need to drop this down a little bit so I can find Create. I can do a Create Project in here, or I can come up here and I can do a File, New Project. Either way, you're going to get to the same place. And that's right here. That's a new project. Now you may not have Win32 available in your Visual C++ set. That takes yet another download from Microsoft from that very same site that you were in, which gives you a software development kit and a series of libraries and such to be able to call on the Win32 code. We want the CLR anyway, and you should definitely have that in your toolkit there under Visual C++. We're just going to make a console application because we're more worried about the language than we are about making pretty forms and text fields and all that sort of thing. We're going to deal more with the C++. So that we'll just make a CLR console application which will pop up in a black screen. We come over here and we need to enter a name, and we'll just call it Hello World. And we'll say OK, and you can see where it's going to put it in your Visual Studio 2005 projects, and I'll let it create a directory for that, and it starts doing its thing, and there we go. So here is our first C source that it created. This is hello world.cpp, and that's the way these files are named. That's a C++ file, and we'll talk about all these other things, namespaces, and this is a Microsoft thing here, but that's okay. We'll get that as well. But here is our main function. Remember in C, you always had to have a main function. Well, that doesn't change. And we have a nice little WriteLine class, which is going to be used, and it's part of a WriteLine method that's used out of the console class. And this is so nice about Microsoft. When you drop your cursor over a word, it tells you where this thing came from. It's a reference to class system console sealed abstract, and that's a standard input, output, and error streams. cannot be inherited because it's an abstract, and so on. We'll get into all that. Don't worry about that. But there's WriteLine, and that tells you all the possible interfaces that can be used to WriteLine, the different things that can pass into it. You see the first one there is void. The next one has a Boolean value. I can't point at those because it'll go away. But there's WriteLine void, WriteLine Boolean value. There's a wide character T value. So these are all interfaces to the WriteLine, so that WriteLine can take in different kinds of parameters. What we're going to give it is this hello world string right here, and then we're going to return 0 and get out of there. So we'll fill in all the details on this stuff as we go through here, and we talk about the language a little more. But as you can see, it's not really too different from what we know in C already. And if you don't know C, that's cool. That you don't have to. We already talked about that. So to start this thing, we come up here to debug and click that. And what we want to do is start without debugging. And I'll show you why here as we go. But that's Control F5 for when you're doing iterative programming and you want to make a few changes and run it through its paces real quick. It's just easier to do a Control F5. So we're going to start without debugging, and then watch this lower window down here. The output window showed up, and there you can see the compile process, the linking process. It succeeded, nothing failed, everything's up to date, nothing was skipped. And there's our hello world. And now press any key to continue. That's because we ran it without debug. So the program has finished and it stops. And since it's a command line program, the IDE understands that we might want to see what came out before it goes running off. So it gives us a press any key to continue, and we can do that. If we do a debug, start debugging F5, we don't have any breakpoints set. It'll flash hello world and then leave again because we didn't tell it to stop any place. So it just ran right on through. Okay, if you can get yours to do that, and hopefully if you downloaded everything that they asked you to and you put it all in there, then good. You're set. Our next video will make a modification to this program and make sure that we can make changes and save the files and so on, and then rerun it. So we'll do that here in our next video. Alrighty, we're back here in Visual C++ 2005 Express Edition, and we have our Hello World program up there that we just created, and I assume that you are stopping back in after the last video. So I'm just going to keep right on going from where we were. We haven't done anything different. We're sitting here with our console WriteLine program and Hello World, and now we're just going to add a few lines to it and make sure that we can make a simple modification and get it to work. So we'll just drop out to the end of our line there and hit enter, and let's start adding to the program. We're going to use this same class and same method out of it, and that's 2 colons defines the separation between the class and the method from the class. Now notice with I think they call it IntelliType, something like that. I'm sure there's some great marketing word for it. The integrated development environment, the IDE, wants to help us out. And if you forget how to write something or type it in, exactly how was the spelling of this thing, then it'll come up and give you a list of all of the different methods that are available to the console class. So there's all kinds of cool things that we can do in there. And what we want is similar to the WriteLine. We're just going to do write, W-R-I-T-E, and there it pops up for us. And it also shows us what it's looking for next and where this is. It's in the core library, it's in the system namespace, and all of that. It gives us a little hint about write, and just so we can kind of remember how to use it. We use our open paren, and then there's 18 different interfaces. There's 18 different possible things that we can put in there, and it'll hint at each one of them exactly what we need to get it correct of all the different things that we can write. We can write doubles out and decimal values and all kinds of other interesting things. All we want to do is put another piece of text though, and we'll use this indicator, and then we'll say my name is, and a space, and then we'll close that and close the paren and the semicolon, and it fixes it right up for us. Now notice the difference between console write and console WriteLine. WriteLine will put a new line, carriage return, after the phrase, and write does not. So there, my name is, and it's going to leave a blank, and we'll come down to the next line, and we'll start console and 2 colons. Now notice that. Isn't that interesting? We don't have a drop-down list of all the interfaces. Well, you know why? Because we have typoed. See the beginning of console? And I knew that. I wanted you to see what happens. I don't have a capital C there. So if I back up and fix that, that's kind of an easy indicator to me that I've messed that up a little bit. If you don't get the completion, the auto typing that you think you should be getting, take a look at the line before you finish it off. You've probably fat-fingered something in there. So now we put console and the 2 colons, and there's our familiar list. Okay, that's what we're looking for. Now we can finish with a right line so that we get a nice carriage return and an L and your double quotes. I'll put my name in there. I assume or expect you to put your name in there, not mine. And we'll put a semicolon out at the end of it. Now that looks like a nice simple addition to our program. Let's go up here to debug, and we will start without debugging because we want to see our wonderful handiwork here. And there you go. We have 2 calls added, the console write, which did the my name is part, and then the console write line, which did the actual name and then took us down to the next line. If I didn't do the right line here, this P of press would be right up there. It would not have taken us down to the next line. Okay, pretty simple, but I wanted to make sure that your system is working and everything's functioning. Notice the green lines. It says all of that has been saved or has been compiled once anyway. If we do a save selected items, it wants to make sure where we're gonna put this. Oh, I'm sorry, it's got the wrong focus. It's in the output build window. See, my focus is down here. That's not where I wanted it because that's where it was from when we compiled. And if you do a save from there, it wants to save this text down here, just so you know what it just tried to do. But it's an easy way to save this output if you have a bunch of errors or a bunch of different warnings and you want to go through them on paper one by one. You can save it off and print it or do something like that. Let me put the focus back up here where I wanted it to be. When my focus is in the code, I'll save hello world. See, it's even prompting me, save hello world CPP. So there, that's tucked away, and we can save the whole project as well with that. So that's our changes, and everything is working the way we expect it to. So if it did it the same thing on yours, good job. Let's move on to our next chapter.